Hello out there in the YouTuberverse. My name is Max, and I want to welcome you back to Paup-Up video from your friends at Supraliminal Films. This episode, we have Boros Monarch, a highly requested deck choice from our viewing audience, so thank you everyone who let us know to play Boros Monarch, and we have it playing against Mono Green Stompy, one of the big beatdown decks of the format. Now, this is going to play out pretty simply, I think. It's going to be Boros Monarch trying to slow the game down and then take over with value in the long game. And Stompy, well, is going to try to Stompy in the very early turns of the game. So, before we jump into it, I just want to take a quick moment to send a special thank you to friend of the channel Dylan, who reached out with a lot of suggestions and technical fixes to help make the show a little bit smoother for everyone. So, hopefully everyone out there enjoys what we have for them in the world of Pauper. So sit back and let's enjoy yet another episode of Paup-Up video. Alright, let's talk about the lands of Boros Monarch. We have 8 different lands. Starting off with Boros Garrison 4, Windscarred Crag 4. We got a few artifact lands. We have Ancient Den 3, Great Furnace 3, Secluded Steppe 2, Radiant Fountain 2, Plains 2, Mountain 1. So it's all about hitting our colors. It's all about using bounce lands in the Boros Garrison to get value off of cards like Secluded Steppe, Radiant Fountain. We really need to make sure that we're maximizing the value of our lands because this is a non-blue control deck. And now we have the spells of the Boros Monarch deck coming at you. You can see there's a wide swath of these as well. And we're going to start it off with 4 Lightning Bolt, 4 Galvanic Blast, 4 Prophetic Prism, 2 Alchemist Vial, 2 Battle Screech, 2 Journey to Nowhere, 1 Oblivion Ring. Now, there's a whole lot of stuff being done here. We got removal, we have creature advantage with the Battle Screech, we have unconditional removal with the O-Ring, any unconditional creature removal with the Journey. We can also win a game with our burn spells, and we're going to gain value off our Alchemist Vials and Prophetic Prisms in concert with our creatures, which we will see here in just a moment. And we have the creatures of the Boros Monarch deck coming at you. Now you can see we don't have nearly the diversity in the creatures that we do in the spells and lands, but we have 4 Glinthawk, 4 Core Skyfisher, 3 Thraben Inspector, 2 Seeker of the Way, and 3 Palace Sentinels. Now the whole core of the deck is this value engine of creatures that we build. Thraben Inspector gives us clues to generate advantage late game. Palace Sentinels gives us the Monarchy, which is the most important key piece of the deck. Glinthawk and Core Skyfisher are in there to bounce permanents and gain value. So this is the engine that gives us the ability to go late and overwhelm the other decks. Good old game 1. Got Jared playing the Stompy, me playing the Monarch. So let's see how it works out. I'm going to start off things in a big bad way with a Volt Scourge. Jared paying 2 life for that Phyrexian mana. He's going to pass it over to me. I have a tap land, so you can definitely tell who's the beatdown in this matchup. Definitely a skill that if you don't have it, you want to really build on is who's the aggressor and who's the one trying to defend. He's going to go ahead and play a Burning Tree Emissary. It's going to generate 2 mana, and another for the same thing. Use one of the 2 mana there, leave the red floating, I think, for the Rancor, and go right into combat, where he's going to flip the script and smack me for 3. Also gaining 3 life because the Volt Scourge conveniently has lifelink. Now, the Kuldotha Boros deck, as it used to be called, had Kuldotha Rebirth, so it could spit out a bunch of goblin tokens and be a little bit more aggressive. Nowadays, we're Boros Monarch, and we're playing Palace Sentinel instead of Kuldotha Rebirth. We're going to go ahead and journey away that Volt Scourge so Jared's not at a bajillion. Now, the Volt Scourge with the Rancor on it is probably the least threatening to me. I think I could win a long game, so that may have been a little preemptive, but I don't know if I had many other good options. I could have led with a creature maybe to try to block and hope that he would swing more, but it just seems like I need to get these creatures off the board. After taking a big hit down to 12, Jared's going to cast a Skargan Pitskulk and give it Bloodthirst. So back to my turn. I have a lot of cobbling together to do to try to catch up in this race. Well, not the race. I'm not really trying to race, but to stay alive. Because I am definitely trying to defend here, and Jared's trying to beat me down. We're going to play a Core Skyfisher, 2/3 flyer, pretty good blocker on this board. And then follow up with a Secluded Step. So as long as Jared's got nothing, all that's going to come in is that Rancored up Emissary, which I'm happy to take 3 here and go down to 9. What I'm hoping he does not have is a pump spell, Hunger the Howpack, or a Vines of the Vast Wood. And he's swinging everything, and my life total's under duress, so I can't afford to just take a hit. So we're going to try to block a 2/2 with a 2/3 and hope we get there. And unfortunately, he has a pump spell, Hunger the Howpack. No Morbid trigger, so it's just good for 1 counter, but 1 counter is enough to clean out my Core Skyfisher, which is bad news bears for me as I take an additional bunch of damage. So, yeah, not great. I'm just double checking that damage, make sure everything's good. But I have a lot of making up to do, and I just don't know if I have the tools in my hand to do it. Obviously, optimal draws would be a Lightning Bolt. That's kind of all I really need is just creature removal at the moment. I don't have a board yet, so there's no real life gain creatures in the main. Jared playing a Korean Ranger, using its ability to bounce a forest and untap a creature, replaying his forest, and getting the mana for an additional Ranger. So, I'm in big trouble here. I need a removal spell right now. Boros Garrison is not a Lightning Bolt, so we're going to play the Great Furnace, float some mana, play the Glint Hawk, keep that red floating in the pool, use the red floating plus the white to play good old Core Skyfisher, returning Secluded Step. Made our land play, played out 2 creatures, but unfortunately, we're taking just a little bit too much damage. We are going to be able to take exactly lethal here, but that's the best we can cobble together. So I really don't think there's much more I could have done. Again, I think maybe instead of journeying right out of the gate, I could have played a Core Skyfisher, but Vault Scourge just attacks so easily into it because Rancor comes back that it makes it really, really hard. I never got a chance to get the O-Stone going in my hand, which would have been pretty clutch against the Rancor, but we're just in such bad shape here that I don't think I was too behind those burning trees. So we're going to take lethal here. And here we go with the sideboards. We're going to take out 3 different cards. We're going to take out 2 Battle Screech and an Electrickery. They don't really do a whole lot against the larger creatures. And we're going to go ahead and put in 2 Lone Missionary and a Cop Green. And we're going to gain some life and prevent some damage. And hopefully be able to stem the bleeding long enough to take over the game. All sideboarded up and ready for game number 2. I'm going to play an Ancient Den. And then I'm going to go ahead and play a Thraben Inspector. And when that enters the battlefield, it's going to produce the first ever clue token, the first ever token on Paup-Up video. So our first token, a clue token. Jared playing a Forest and passing. No Vault Scourge. No problems yet. We draw another removal spell, up to 2 removal spells in our hands, pretty good. We go ahead and play Boros Garrison, which will require me to return the Ancient Den. And attack for 1. Ooh, who's the beatdown now? But seriously, I'm not the beatdown. I just got... Get your attacks in when you can. No haste creatures out of the Stompy deck. And he's going to play good old Burning Tree Emissary into Nest Invader. Still pretty good, because when Nest Invader enters the battlefield, it's going to make the second ever token on Paup-Up video, Eldrazi Spawn. Jared's going to pass it back to me. And right now, really have to kind of try to figure a way to deal with this board. And unfortunately, a little choked on red mana. So I'm going to play out a Core Skyfisher and conveniently bounce that clue token, so we don't have to keep bouncing our lands like we did game 1. Replay that Ancient Den, which is not a red source. And the reason I'm mentioning red source is because if you don't know, when Jared attempts to target a creature with his Rancor, which he does have, spoiler alert, I can Lightning Bolt in response to a Rancor. The creature dies before Rancor can enter the battlefield, because an aura has to enchant as it's cast, I believe is how the ruling works there. And the Rancor would not return to Jared's hand because it never entered the battlefield. But meanwhile, we don't have that luxury, so he is going to Nest Invader and smack us for 4, followed by yet another Skargan Pit Skulk with the Bloodthirst. Oh boy. He's going to give me the turn. Draw a Prophetic Prism. Again, that'll help a little bit. And so there's a couple options that I can do this turn. I can play an additional Skyfisher with a mana floating. That'll allow me to bounce the Ancient Den, replay. We still have we don't have any mana floating, but we can play... Or no, we do have a mana floating, yeah, because we tap 3 mana. Yep. So we go back up to starting life. Now the other option there that I could have done is attempt to Lightning Bolt plus Journey to try to take some things off the board, but another good way to defend yourself against this Stompy deck is to try to build up a board, a little different than what I did in Game 1. Now I'm not sure if that's exactly the best move, or a slightly less profitable line, but we'll see how it goes. Sacking Eldrazi Spawn token for a colorless mana, as is its built-in ability, plus a green. I'm just going to use the green for Hunger of the Howlpack to get that Morbid trigger. Now that's really bad, because now that Pit Skulk can't be blocked except by creatures with 5 power or more. And we're going to get a swing of the Nest Invader plus the Giant Pit Skulk. Really don't have a whole heck of a lot of choices here. I think a Gang block is a possibility. Could be just a chump block to get the Nest Invader out of here. I have a little bit of life buffer built in, but man, that is a meaty hit for 8 damage. But the creatures will trade off, thankfully. But that Rancor coming back to his hand, and Jared knows very well what instant speed removal can do, taking the advantage of me being tapped out to Rancor up his Burning Tree Emissary, but not putting it on the eyeball. I can't say too much, I screwed up quite a bit. But, you know, it's hard to think and put cards in the right place. So, I didn't think it'd be as difficult as it was. Radiant Fountain. A colorless mana source gave me back a little bit of life. Now, we have that same option of it could be Lightning Bolt plus Journey. I'm going to opt to Prophetic Prism. So let me know what you think about this play in the comments. Should I have gone for double removal spell here? Or should I have gone for Prophetic Prism plus potential sorcery speed removal, which is what I go for here in the Journey? Or should I have gone Prophetic plus Lightning Bolt? But my thought is getting that Pit Skulk off the battlefield. But unfortunately, Jared's stacked hand continues to provide. And he's got a Vines of the Vastwood to give that hexproof until end of turn. Settable Fizzle might enter the battlefield trigger on the Journey. So Journey will sit, but the effect will do nothing, so it'll be a Journey to nowhere for no one. Now, I wish I had another core Skyfisher. I'd love to pick up that Journey to nowhere and recast it. We can see Jared not slowing down the gas pedal here. Well ahead in life total. Behind on sheer number of cards on board, but man, oh man, we're taking a big hit here again for 5. And Jared going to arrange it so my core Skyfisher is eaten up, but the Inspector survives. Putting 2 creatures to 1 on the battlefield here, but Jared gets his Rancor back, which is unfortunate. He's going to pay another 2 life for a Vault Scourge, and then use the Rancor on the Vault Scourge, and we're back to the technology we had in Game 1. And a Forest. So again, our main problem is that Pit Skulk. We need a core Skyfisher, we need another Journey, an O-Ring. I think O-Ring got sided out though, so we need some kind of unconditional removal for that Pit Skulk. We're going to go ahead and cast Seeker of the Way with our Karu land, the Boros Garrison, and pass it over to Jared. So there's not much we can do here. We're kind of prized into either chumping with the Skyfisher on the Vault Scourge or lightning bolting it. Not really great options either way you spin it. And Skyfisher's going to block the Vault Scourge. Jared up to 18. And Rancor back in hand. Burning Tree Emissary. And good old Rancor. Alright, we're down to 4. We can lightning bolt. My intent is to lightning bolt the Emissary out of the way and then attack with the life-linking Seeker of the Way to gain 3 life. The problem with that plan is it puts me up to 7, which is the exact amount of damage that the Pit Skulk can deal me when it gets Rancored up. But I can't wait to do that, otherwise Jared has Lethal Well in hand. Because I need the life gain. So he'll get the Rancor back. And really kind of leaves me in a tight spot. I'm going to attack for 3. So it'll swap some life totals around a little bit. Puts me up to 7, but again, still in lethal range from that Pit Skulk, which is unblockable. And I will play a Seeker not to the middle, and a Thraben Inspector not to the middle, and produce a clue token that I will not put in the middle. But that's just me kind of vomiting the remains of my hand of the old Magic ethos of, this is all that I had. All of it is useless against your threat. Jared's going to Rancor up and swing it into me being tapped out, and that does it. And that is the match for this episode of Paup-Up Video. As is customary, I'd like to do a quick little overview, share some thoughts, as now I have them both as an announcer and a player in this episode, so I wanted to share them with you. Game 1, that was a beating. I don't think there's anything really I could have done to stop the landslide that Jared had. It showcases very much the effectiveness of the Burning Tree Emissary in the mono green Stompy deck. It definitely takes some of the most aggressive advantage of the mana that card was presented to go Burning Tree into Rancor on Vault Scourge was a pretty impressive line of play out of the Stompy deck and put him so far ahead that game that I don't think I could have caught back up. Now, game 2, I do think there's a different line I could have taken the turn I played the Prophetic Prism into Journey to Nowhere, and I do think that could have been playing the Lightning Bolt first on the Burning Tree Emissary that had the Rancor on it. The reason I think that is because it could have possibly pulled out that Vines of Vastwood, and it would have used it on a less premium threat than the Pit Skulk. Now, there's no guarantee that Jared would have used it. It was very much a less important piece of the puzzle, so he may have just been happy to have that lightning bolted and saved something else for the Pit Skulk. It's possible. I'm not 100% sure if he would have just snapped off the vines on any piece of removal. It absolutely depends on the player and their familiarity with the matchup. I personally think it would have been incorrect to waste the vines on just a 2/2 that had a Rancor on it, because the Rancor would have gone back to his hand and he would have had it for the more premium threat in the Pit Skulk. But it is possible that you can try to make your opponent make a mistake, and that works when you're behind sometimes. So I can absolutely see the validation in that line. Overall, I think this matchup is a little bit closer than how we ended up portraying it. If I were to go back in time and do it again, and we will feature, obviously we're not done by any stretch. It's not like one deck only gets viewed one time. We'll definitely play decks again. And I think the main change I'd like to make to the Boros Monarch deck is the list we had a Singleton O-Ring in it. It's pretty flexible, and I can see why it was in the main board. And I know a lot of lists are getting away from the Singleton O-Ring, and I can totally see why. The card was clunky. It's too... it sounds crazy to say that card's too expensive. But I do believe in the main board it is too expensive mana cost-wise for Pauper. I think just having a 3-cost removal spell in your deck is a little bit of a liability because, especially a singleton removal spell, if it's Pestilence or something that can wipe the board or Crypt Rats, that's one thing. But to have a 3-cost card that is a catch-all for one thing feels really bad in a lot of matchups, and this mono-green matchup is one of them. I think Affinity or a similar aggro deck would also showcase how clunky O-Ring is. If O-Ring in that hand were a Galvanic Blast or a Lightning Bolt, I think I would have been way better served in that first game than I was having that 3-cost just could never get it down O-Ring. It really ended up being a bit of a liability in the deck, and I think going forward I would certainly cut it. I would also probably look to increase my potency against the aggressive decks a little bit. There is mainboard Electrickery and a few more Electrickery. That's pretty good against elves. It's okay against a Delver-style deck, especially an Izzet Delver deck where they're playing Spell Stutter Sprites and Fairy Miscreants. I think that's an effective tool. I'm not exactly sure that we need that many things, but Mono Green Stompy is a little bit of an anomaly. I wouldn't call it a Tier 1 deck, but I certainly wouldn't go as far as to call it a Tier 2 deck in the format. Again, if you disagree, let me know down below. But I do think it is one of the premier aggro decks of the format. I think it's equally as potent as anything else that's coming out of the aggressive side of Pauper. And I think you need to be prepared for that deck to come up. And I think having some things to play against it that are a little bit more robust would be better. Well, Missionary's okay at blocks and trades with a lot of their stuff. But overall, I think the deck needs a little bit more punch in the board. So going forward, I'd like to make that change when we feature Boros Monarch again in the future. Other than that, though, the deck felt pretty good. I didn't have any problems with it. A little bit of issues here and there with the potency of my hand. But overall, I can see why it's a staple of the format, for sure. I like seeing a non-blue based control. So hopefully we'll get to feature it again, and hopefully you'll come back for the next Paup-Up video. Thanks a bunch.